All right, let's continue with Unit 1 review, or now I'm going to look at the Neolithic Revolution. So, 10,000 years ago, we see the Neolithic Revolution take place. It wasn't overnight, it wasn't dramatic, it was over a very long period of time, and it varied from place to place as to when it occurred, but it always occurs after the end of the Ice Age. So, Ice Age. Most of the Earth is nice and cold and frozen, but then the climate starts warming up, and that ice slowly melts, and that means that there's going to be more water supply in the water cycle, which means that there's going to be more rain, there's going to be larger rivers and more lakes, and that means that there's going to be easier access to water to irrigate crops and therefore grow crops. So climate change at the end of the ice age pretty much made it physically possible, geographically possible for the Neolithic Revolution to take hold. Now, the Neolithic Revolution begins in the Fertile Crescent. It develops there first. We see the first signs of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent. The Fertile Crescent is found in the Eastern Mediterranean. It is found in Egypt and Mesopotamia, which is, of course, going to be the first civilizations as well. We're going to see it in other places shortly afterwards, places like the Indus River in India, the Huanghe River in China. We're going to see it in sub-Saharan Africa. We're going to see it in Papua New Guinea, that's next to Australia. And lastly, we're going to see it in the Americas. America is probably going to be the last place to develop the new the or go through the Neolithic Revolution. Um, Probably because people remember they're migrating there. That's where humans got to that place last. So Neolithic Revolution means farming, right? So we see the development of farming, we see the development of towns and cities and um, everything else. Now, pastoralism is a continuity from the foundations, right? From the Paleolithic era. Remember, the pastoralists are people who are always moving from place to place. They live on grasslands primarily. They're going to take care of animals and like camels and horses. They're going to take care of cattle, sheep, goats, right? Where are we going to find these people, right? These pastoralists who are constantly moving around from place to place. There's two major places. One is going to be in Central Asia. That's called the Eurasian steppes. And the other one's going to be in the savannah of Africa, right? And even though they had different names, they're pretty much the same thing, right? These flat lands of grass, right? Um, which is perfect for these animals to survive in. Now, wherever humans settle down, they're going to cultivate the crops that are available to them naturally. They're going to domesticate the animals that are live in that area naturally. So, for example, in Mesoamerica, right? It's Mexico and Central America. We're gonna see potatoes, and maize and squash, right? Those are kind of like the native food. Those are the crops are already there. Those are the crops that they're gonna focus on growing, especially maize. It's gonna be the main one. In the Andean region, we're going to see llamas available to them because llamas are indigenous to the Andes Mountains of South America, and they're going to domesticate the llama. In North Africa and Southwest Asia and in South Asia, right, wheat and barley and sheep and goats and cattle, right, different food, different crops, different animals. In East Asia, that'll be China, right? We're going to see rice as the main crop, but they're also going to have pigs and chickens and water buffalo. In sub-Saharan Africa, that is the region of Africa south of the Sahara, they're going to have yams and sorghum. They're going to have cattle and goats and sheep. So these different crops and animals, remember, they're domesticating what is available to them naturally. And here we see a map of that kind of like division of or that regions where people have those crops. Um, Now as these kind of like farming communities grow into towns, they have to learn to work together. There's two main reasons. One is you need irrigation systems. You need to be able to set up dams so your houses don't flood when the river rises. You need to have canals, right, so that each farm has access to water, wells, right, where people again could have access to water, clean water. And these systems, these irrigation systems require a lot of labor, requires a lot of work, right? So it means you need to get people to work together. So how do you get people to work together? We need some type of leader. So you need a political leader, you need a governor, a mayor, a king to be in charge and kind of organize the workers for the common good, right? So the need for cooperation, right? If everyone just does their own thing and no one works together, then no one's going to survive because they don't have water, they don't have defenses, they don't have food. So the need for cooperation is going to lead to the beginnings of the state, of the government, right? And also of taxation, because now the government is going to say, okay, we're going to build this canal, but everyone has to chip in a little bit. Everyone has to pay their parts. Everyone has to pay a tax, right? And that's the beginnings of the government and of taxes during the Neolithic Revolution. Now, whether we're looking at farmers, right, which are sedentary people, meaning that they're not moving around, or pastoralist people who are nomadic and they're always moving around, where they're always going to have a impact on the environment. So one thing we see is that any animal or plant that was not domesticated will be killed, will be eradicated, will be deleted by farmers, right? And by pastoralists. So if you're a pastoralist, you're taking care of your goats, and a wolf shows up, you're gonna try your hardest to kill that wolf because it's a threat to your food supply. We're also gonna see slash and burn agriculture develop throughout the world. In fact, some places still practice slash and burn agriculture. The problem with that is that that leads to deforestation, right? Where you cut down your trees, and then there's no roots in the soils to keep the water, and therefore all the water every time it rains just kind of flows out, and the soil remains dry. We see over farming, right? When you grow the same crop over and over and over on the same piece of land, eventually the soil will lose its nutrients and its minerals, and it will not be able to grow anything else. And that's what we call soil erosion. Overgrazing, that means you allow your animals to eat up all the grass, and you don't give it enough time for that grass to regrow naturally, and is something called desertification, meaning that it will become like a desert, right? Because the crops won't grow, right? So this is environmental degradation. This is a result of the Neolithic Revolution, and this is something that humans are still dealing with to this modern day. Now, the Neolithic Revolution, whether we're looking at animal domestication and through pastoralism or through plants, through agriculture, we see that more food would lead to more people, right? That is one of the major world history concepts. The more food you have, the more people you will have as well, right? Increased population. Now, the surplus of food will also lead to the specialization of labor. That means that with enough farmers and pastoralists around, more and more people don't have to worry about where their food is going to come from. And that means that they get to do other jobs besides farm, right? They have different jobs besides being a farmer. So we see the development of artisans and craftspeople. These are people who make stuff like pottery, stuff like clothing, stuff like furniture, stuff like brick houses, right? Those are artisans. And then we also see the development of elites, right? People who provide a special service to the community that is considered important, right? So what service could this be? It could be protection, like soldiers protect you, right? It could be leadership, like people in the government, right? Or it could be spiritual guidance, which is the religious, the priests, right? So these jobs would not have existed ever in the Paleolithic era, right? But they definitely exist in the Neolithic era. right? And they only exist because there's enough farmers producing enough food to keep all these people, you know, fed, and therefore they could do something else besides worrying about food, right? So these are the different, um, right, those different jobs we just mentioned about. Think about a musician. There wouldn't have been a musician during the Paleolithic era because no one would have cared about, music. They would have cared about what they're gonna eat. All right. We also see new technologies that will improve transportation, improve trade, or improve production. So pottery is one of those new technologies made out of clay, right? You can store food, you could cook in it. The plow, right? This right here, that's the plow, right? You attach it to an animal, the animal drags it, you dig it into the earth, and you can plant your seeds into the soil, right? The as clothing, metallurgy is the first use of tools and weapons made out of metal. So this is the beginnings, right, of metallurgy. Because remember, we're still in the Stone Age. We're still in the Neolithic, which is the new Stone Age. So metallurgy begins here, but we'll see it grow and expand in the next time period, in time period two. Oh, sorry, time period one. Wheels and vehicles, right, for carts and wagons. Those are stuff you need to transport people and goods. Now, as these societies, whether it's the agrarian or the pastoralist societies, as they grow and become more and more complex, they're going to change their social structure or their social stratification, and they're going to change or they're going to see the development of patriarchy. So stratification means that there's going to be a division between upper class people and middle class people and lower class people. And for the most part, the upper class people are going to be the wealthy who own a lot of land, and the military leaders, the political leaders, and the religious leaders, right? And that means that your common people, your commoners, your laborers, your peasants, your poor people, your farmers, they will be in the lower and the middle parts of society. Now, patriarchy, of course, is the restrictions that women have have had placed on them, um, and women are kind of like secluded to work in the domestic sphere, meaning that they stay at home basically, right, taking care of the kids and running the household. And this is a result of the changes in labor, right? Because men were the main participants of the construction of communal projects. Like the men are going to be out there digging the canals, the men are going to be out there building the walls of the cities, the men are going to be out there fighting in the battlefields, right? Because those jobs were valued more, because without it, the whole society will crumble, the whole city will collapse, the whole town will get conquered, because those jobs were more vital, right, to the benefit of everyone, right? People started saying, well, those jobs are done by men, and therefore the men should have a more important role than the women, right? So because the value of the labor, shifted, right, men began exerting more rights than women, and women began to be um, confined to the domestic sphere, right? In uh, at home. So here we see kind of like one of the earliest social structures with this would be the Egyptians, right? The religious leaders, the military leaders would be at the top, right? The commoners, the craftspeople, the farmers, and at the bottom, the slaves. All right, so we're gonna stop here. Thank you for listening to part two of Unit 1.